Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Market Maven podcast. I know it has been a little while. I hit that 100 mark and I kind of fell off the radar, but summer is busy. It's busy for a farmer's market manager. It is busy in general because we're all trying to enjoy the Pacific Northwest weather that we don't see throughout the winter very often, even though I know that's kind of a rumor. I've had a lot going on in life too, and that's for a different episode. But today I want to talk about lettuce. It is probably something you know where I'm going to go with this because, explosive diarrhea and outbreaks, but it's probably not the most riveting topic that you were expecting with all of my PSAs and recent interviews and those types of things. But you know where I'm going. This episode isn't really about lettuce. It's about trust. It's about labor. It's about science. And it's about the invisible systems that keep food on our tables. It's also about the lesson that I thought we learned during COVID, but we forgot it just a few short years later. Part one, why is it always lettuce? Why are we always hearing about lettuce and leafy greens being the source of sickness and outbreaks and those types of things? Cyclospora outbreak, the one that we're experiencing right now, has been linked to shredded lettuce, iceberg lettuce specifically. Lettuce is eaten raw. Leafy greens are often eaten raw. They don't get cooked. They don't get washed as thoroughly. It helps, but it isn't necessarily a pure and refined science, and it's not foolproof. Most of these things, like I said, don't get cooked to remove the bacteria, and that's true for many vegetables, but lettuce seems to be something that is just so common. Bagged salads often combine product from many fields and many different processing lots. So when something goes wrong, this can affect thousands of people spread across dozens of states. And here's the thing. I don't actually think lettuce is the story. I think there's a much, much bigger thing that we need to be talking about. So part two, the food system that we have built from history through today. I want to walk you through the grocery store head of lettuce. Imagine that one head of lettuce that you pick up at your local Safeway or Aldi or Trader Joe's or anywhere like that. And I'm not calling out any of these businesses. I'm just saying your local grocery store. It starts with a seed company that goes to an industrial farm. You've got harvest crews. You have a processing facility. It's mixed with thousands of other heads of lettuce. It's bagged, goes to a warehouse, it goes to a distribution center, it's probably put on a truck or a plane, it ends up in a restaurant or the grocery store, and then it hits you, the consumer, the customer, the patron of the restaurant. That is an incredible feat for our food system, given where we've come from. It's a great engineering accomplishment, but it's also an incredibly complicated system. Every time we add another step to our food process, what are we gaining? And what are we risking at the same time? Part three, I want to talk about the people that nobody talks about within that system. When we talk about food safety, we talk about the bacteria, we talk about the outbreaks, the sickness, the recalls. We almost never talk about the people who plants it, who harvests it, who spends 10 hours bent over in the fields, who's loading it, who's packing it, and who's outside ultimately when it's 105 degrees. Right now, we're going through a major heat wave in the Pacific Northwest and truly across the United States. Imagine being out for 10, 12, 14 hours in the heat that we're all experiencing. Could you survive that? Could you thrive in it? Most of these food workers do not get air conditioning. And the food itself that arrives at our table or the restaurant or in the bags doesn't magically appear under fluorescent grocery lights. Many farm workers are out there in these extraordinary conditions to bring you that bag or that head of lettuce, even our local farmers too. The extreme heat, the physically demanding labor. Listen, I went and picked strawberries recently with some girlfriends at a local You Pick Strawberry Farm festival. We got to pet baby animals, that type of a thing. And I can tell you, just picking the 2 pounds of strawberries that I did, and it wasn't even 95 degrees. I think it was probably upper to mid 70s, bending over, picking, looking, bending over for not a good berry, bending over for a berry that was not ripe yet. It was hard. And I think I spent maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes at most doing it. I was tired. I was hot. I was sweaty. It's a lot. But yet these farm workers are working in these conditions every day. I was there for fun. They're there for a job. Their wages are extremely low. And we're talking far less than minimum wage, if that's even talking about the United States. Sometimes, and in many cases, these farm workers have inadequate access to shade, to clean water, to hand washing stations, or even a bathroom. You know what I'm talking about. This is the thing that exists, and we know it exists, but we just look beyond it, kind of like slaughterhouses, kind of like the poor conditions that chickens and livestock are kept in these major industrial farms. We're talking about human beings here. Sometimes there's not very much job security, even though they're existing in these horrible conditions and these horrible wages. It's just a matter of bringing home anything they can to feed their families and to pay their rent and pay their bills. Sometimes these people end up being invisible. I know we see this in our Hmong flower community as well. People love the bouquets, the varieties that come throughout market season, but we really don't stop to think about how early that farmer had to get up to harvest those fresh flowers for the bouquet that you're going to pick up for 20 bucks at the farmer's market. These people are often invisible because they maybe don't communicate as well with you at the farmer's market. They maybe don't speak your language in a very fluent way, but ultimately they are humans and they go home to their families and they do wicked hard work in order to bring you the things that we enjoy every week at a farmer's market or throughout the year at a grocery store. I have to ask you, though, to think about this for a second. Can we really separate these workers from food safety? Can we separate their safety from food safety? I want you to sit with that for a minute. If someone doesn't have access to sanitation, if they're afraid to take a break because of job security, if they're working 12 hours or 14 hours or 16 hours in triple-digit heat, doesn't that become part of our food system too? Because if they didn't exist, the food on your table would not exist. Now on to part 4. We only seem to notice science when it actually disappears. I think that we've reached a strange and awakening moment in America, kind of like I mentioned earlier with COVID. Farmers markets are having a moment because we are going back to that time, like during COVID, when we realize the complete breakdown in our systems can stem from one industrial farm, can stem from one parasitic outbreak, can stem from fear. Many people are turning to farmers markets right now because they trust and know their local farmer. But I want to talk about research, science, the FDA, the USDA, for those in Washington, the WSDA. These are departments of agriculture. These are health labs. These are inspectors. These are university extension programs. These are food scientists. And they are existing in our society for a reason. When you go to a third world country, many of things like this don't exist. Many of these departments, many of these oversights don't exist. And there's a reason that there's a higher level of sickness and outbreaks and pandemics in these third world countries because of a lack of oversight. And I wish that we could have a common oversight and a common department for everywhere, but we don't run other countries and we can't force that on places. But the problem is that a lot of our food system involves these other countries, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you want raspberries in February or blueberries in May. those types of things. They come from Chile, Mexico, Argentina. There's so much rich culture and food access that comes from these other countries. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room when we talk about worker conditions in both other countries and our own country. There is a reason that many of these outbreaks never become national news, because these aren't faceless bureaucrats. These are food scientists. And we have to acknowledge the importance of these outbreaks and these people with the oversight, and the fact that we have taken so much of the funding away and cut entire departments down to minimal or no staff. We're reducing the oversights and slowly becoming some of these third world countries when it comes to how we view our food system and how we're taking proper care of the food systems that we've built over hundreds of years that America has been around. Food safety isn't magic. It doesn't just exist, and washing your produce doesn't just get rid of things necessarily. Food safety and food security both go hand in hand, and food worker management are investments in our livelihood, in our nation, in our families, in our children, in our farmers, in our agriculture. It is such a broad, broad picture. When funding and staffing and oversight are reduced, there are fewer people doing surveillance, inspections, research. And I want to frame this as a systems issue, an entire systems issue, rather than implying that every outbreak stems from one decision. But we are seeing the cascading domino effects of getting rid of funding and getting rid of some of these departments that have provided oversight for so many years. Part 5, social media has entered the chat. This is fun because TikTok has apparently decided that everybody is a nutritionist. Everybody is now a nutrition diet grifter that wants to sell you a supplement or tell you how you're doing your grocery shopping wrong, or even make fun of small grocery stores and remote vacation towns. What privilege we have as a society to be taking our nutrition advice and our dietary advice and our supplemental advice from grifters and people that just have a TikTok or an Instagram account. I'm talking about raw milk. I'm talking about detox trends. I'm talking about miracle supplements, carnivore influencers, sunbathing your nether regions. The list goes on and on. The seed oil panic, people selling certainty that they know the exact way to fix all of your ailments, to cure cancer. And I just find it fascinating that we have become skeptical of scientists, but yet we are so trusting of influencers selling products. I highly recommend listening to the Maintenance Phase podcast and following some of these debunking influencers on Instagram, because they will stitch things together and show you exactly who you're dealing with. A pseudo chiropractor selling you the carnivore diet or raw milk or making you afraid of seed oils. Other people convincing you that cancer doesn't actually exist. It's just in your head because you've been brainwashed by the media system. Question authority. Question everything at this point in time except the science. Question the government, question the processes, question these corporations, because if you do a little bit of digging, you will find that this farm is really attached to this global entity that has 500 different brands. And sometimes they pit you against each of their brands just to drive you towards another one that is also owned by them. Question these influencers, because I promise you, a platform does not make you an expert, and it does not make what they're saying true, no matter how convincing of a story. Do your research. Please, please, please do your research. Healthy skepticism should apply equally to all of these different entities. Part 6, COVID. It changed us. Do you remember what happened during COVID? People asked questions, whether or not they were right or wrong. Where was this grown? Who's my farmer? Can I buy local? Can I support my community? We watched our farmers market explode. It was one of the biggest years we had in the history up till that point. The sales jumped astronomically. Now, it was because we were one of the only entities and events that was actually allowed to happen, that was sanctioned as a safe event. They were held outside, and so the spread of COVID was much less likely. We required masks, we required social distancing. And looking back, are there things that we could have done differently and better? Yes. Should I have trusted just blindly the science? I know I just said trust the science, but I know at that point in time, we were still trying to figure out a lot of different things. The CDC was really scrambling because we had never experienced something like that. And you also have to remember who was in the administration at that point in time too, who was making blanket statements without actually listening to some of the scientists and the CDC and recommendations. Again, do I think everything was done 100% right, regardless of red or blue, Republican or Democrat? No, I don't, having lived through it. But what I know happened for a fact is that we saw the breakdown of our food system. Factories were shut down, big farms were shut down, and we had to go search locally. We watched our markets explode. People realized local matters, relationships matter. We felt so starved for those relationships and connections, and resilience matters. But then we got comfortable again. All of that seemingly has disappeared. And I have said this over and over and over in this podcast, in conversations, and how we work our farmers markets. It seems like it's just been forgotten. I remember thinking how beautiful it was that we could all come together in so many different ways and support each other in so many different ways. And I was so hopeful that we could continue this change, especially when it came to supporting local businesses indefinitely. But as things got back to normal, whatever normal is, we saw that just start to fade away. And it broke my heart. It made me so, so sad that it disappeared. That's not to say that farmers markets haven't continued having their moment, but people have gone back to the expectation that we have all produce all of the months that we're open. We have XYZ whenever they want it. We have peonies in September. We have dahlias in May. It just doesn't work like that. And I don't know what the difference is between now and COVID times where people actually thought about these things in a little bit more of a realistic way, but that seems to have disappeared. And that's why I'm saying don't always just trust influencers. I think social media has played a big part in this. Even farmers markets have become influencer friendly. We have had so many more tags on our farmers market pages of people taking the perfect shot with their drink and their flowers or their market haul. And we love it. We love any possible way that the word can get out about experiencing your local farmers market and supporting local businesses. However, I just want to make sure that people remember that it is fleeting and it can go away. And the breakdown of our food systems highlight these ways. These food systems are so fragile. And it is important to keep supporting the local ones because that is where your food truly comes from. Part 7. Farmers markets aren't perfect. I do want to be really clear. Local farms are not immune to bacteria, to infections. Outbreaks can happen just about anywhere. That's why we continue to get the flu virus and the common cold and sinus infections and all of those different types of things. It's why infants and kids in school and parents of kids in school end up getting sicker way more often because there's just a bigger exposure problem. Farmers markets aren't necessarily magically safer, but there is a difference. If something happens, you know who grew it, you know where, you know when, you know who to call, which would be me, your market manager. That's transparency, it's accountability, and that's the relationship that farmers markets bring to the table, pun intended, that big farms, and I keep wanting to say big pharma, also probably true, do not. Part 8. Cheap food isn't actually cheap. This is where I want to get a little bit philosophical. I think that we've been sold the idea that cheaper food is better. And I say that with some context. If it's more affordable and that's what you can afford because you're on food access programs and things like that, 100%, you need to do what you need to do to feed your family. But I'm talking in the more general scope of things. Who is paying that real cost? Who is cutting out the middleman so that they can bring you the bottom basement pricing on lettuce and salad mixes and those types of things? The soil, the worker, the researcher, the inspector, the taxpayer, future generations, climate. These are all things that are the prices we pay for cheaper food, for cutting costs, for bringing out the discount lettuce and salad mixes and berries and all that kind of stuff. It's a perceived value thing and not necessarily an actual value thing. So I need to ask you for part 9, what kind of system do we actually want? One that's only efficient or one that is resilient for generations to come? One that's anonymous or one that is built on relationships? One that treats food as a commodity and something to be hoarded and priced out and cheapened? Both of those things can exist at the same time. Or one that treats food as something deeply, deeply human. Imagine if the farmland surrounding you where you live, if you live close to somewhere that has agriculture, were to disappear and be replaced with housing. How does that affect the way you drive to work? How does that affect your overall emotional health in your home when you don't necessarily see the fields on your drive to work? How does that affect the schooling for your kids? How does that affect the relationship with your neighbors if 300 new houses are built right in your backyard where there used to be a farm? How does that affect overall climate if trees and fields are knocked down? It's a lot. And somebody online might tell you that you can get all of your nutrients out of a supplement that they're selling, or again, going out in the sun and sunning your nether regions. But the cost is huge. We are losing farmland left and right for big developments, for generations that don't want to take on that manual labor of having a farm and doing the work. We are seeing climate change rise at a rapid rate, and that is evidenced in the death of animals, the extinction of bugs, and the good parasites that help keep others at bay. We are seeing all of this rise at an alarming rate. And I'm afraid that we're going to get to some of those fictional films that don't seem so fictional in this apocalyptic world we're living in, the dystopian future of food rations and chemically laden supplements like these grifters are trying to sell you. Because if we don't consider the source of our food and where it comes from and maybe paying a little bit more for it, maybe not, we're going to lose something that is so deeply human and deeply part of who we are as society. And it breaks my heart because this is my life. This is my job every single week for 6 months. And then behind a desk for the other 6 months is making sure we're bringing balance and food to our community. And yes, we deal with food access systems too, to encourage people to not just go for the cheapest thing, but to actually still come and support their local farmers, even when they're on food access programs that make it seem impossible to feed their family. I don't run a farmer's market because I think grocery stores are evil. Just to make sure that everybody knows that. I shop at grocery stores frequently. But in closing, I want to touch on why I run a farmer's market, because I believe that communities are stronger when they know the people who feed them. I see it built every day in relationships and customers coming up to talk to us at the market information tent and talk about an experience, sharing in the social media comments and those types of things about the experience they had or the conversation they had, the person they ran into, or even the fact that maybe their kid and the farmer's kid or the maker's kid ended up going to school or they graduated together. All of those things are so important on a week-to-week basis. And those things don't happen with AI. They don't happen necessarily online, and they don't happen in these big industrious farm centers that are just assembly lines of lettuce heads. I believe that science matters. I believe wholeheartedly that farmers matter. I believe that farm workers matter, and that includes immigrants as well, because I can assure you that this whole myth of immigrants are taking our jobs is not true in the farming world, because I would never volunteer to be a farm worker. I couldn't even last an hour picking strawberries with my friends. I did it for the gram, I guess you could say, and supporting a local farm too. I believe health inspectors matter, even though I know I bump heads with them a lot of the time. I believe research matters, and I believe that food isn't just something we consume. It is something that connects us. As we talked about in the episode with Amber, hospitality is more than just having a perfect house. It is connecting over food because we all have to eat it. We all have to eat it every single day in order to survive. And we are quickly running out of options for the freshest, most local food that is seasonal and regional and continues to connect us. I believe that every tomato has a story, every carrot has a story, and every head of lettuce has a story. Some right now have a really, really bad headline story, but the ones you're getting at a farmer's market don't have that same story. They have a much happier ending. Most of us never stop long enough to hear that story of where that particular item came from. Maybe it's time we started asking different questions. Not how cheap can I get this, but who grew it, who harvested it, who protected it, who made sure it was safe, and what kind of food system am I supporting with this dollar that I'm about to use to purchase it? Because every grocery receipt and every farmer's market purchase is more than a transaction. It is a vote with your dollar. It is a vote for the kind of agriculture we want. It's a vote for the kind of communities that we want to see. And ultimately, it's a vote for the kind of future we want to build. I really appreciate you listening to me get on my soapbox about more than lettuce. And I hope that you can make some changes in your everyday life to support local, to just get curious about where items are coming from. That's all I'm asking. Get curious, because the answers to the curiosity might surprise you. Take care.